Welcome. So this is the very first live event for It's Not Cheating. It's the Non-Monogamy Breakfast. And today it is Jessie Sage from Peep Show Media and myself. And we are going to be kicking the day off with discussions focusing on non-monogamy. Jessie, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Okay, so Jessie, tell us a little bit about yourself so that, we can all get to know who you are and what it is that you do.
Well, I do a lot of different things. I host the Peep Show podcast on Peep Show Media. We bring news and stories from the sex industry. I am also a sex columnist at the Pittsburgh City Paper, although that's on furlough with COVID right now, so that's kind of a bummer. But I'm expecting it to come back. And I'm a writer who focuses on sexuality and also the sex industry. I'm also a phone sex operator and a content creator and an online sex worker. So that's a little bit about me.
So awesome. Wow. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Nookie Notes on most social media personally, and I run Dating Kinky, and we are the sponsors and producers of the It's Not Cheating event. And I've been in kink for over 25 years now, and I write and I teach. I've taught internationally about kink. We'll head right into the morning discussion. So, Jessie, the first thing that we're going to talk about is how do we identify in non-monogamy? How would you describe your non-monogamy?
Oh, man. I don't even really know. And the reason I say I don't know is for a couple reasons. One is that it's changed over time depending on the life circumstances that I'm in or what's going on. So it hasn't always looked the same. But also I think that I'm a child from the 90s and I'm pretty resistant to identifying with anything. So I think that I would probably describe things as fairly fluid because I don't have a very set way of doing things. I entered into non-monogamy more than 10 years ago in my first marriage that I'm not in anymore, which, non-monogamy is not the reason why we split up, but we were monogamous for a long time. We got together when I was 17. We were both 17 and we're together 20 years, but we, about 15 years into our marriage, we started talking about opening things up. I have a weird life story because I was in my 30s the first time I had sex with somebody who wasn't the person I lost my virginity to. So I was monogamous for a really, really long time to the first person that I, fell in love with. And then he brought things up. And it took me a while to wrap my head around that. And then once I did, it kind of changed my whole world. Opening things up a little bit within the context of my relationship also opened up my whole world, even though we didn't end up staying together. And even though he and I would swing together. And even though I'm not part of swinging communities now, and that's not really the way that I express non-monogamy in the current relationship and in my current life, it did kind of just change me and open me up to a lot of different ways of doing things. So it's actually pretty complicated because a lot of my sexual energy goes into work now because I'm a sex worker.
Yeah, even if you have so much more than the average human, when you expend that on things, it's still expense.
Yeah, it is. And, I'm a mom too. And so I have kids and I have a primary partner and I have clients. And so at this point, I'm not out seeking relationships. But that being the case, we have a pretty fluid and open thing, so people wander in and out. And so I don't really know how I would identify that, but I do feel probably non-monogamous is the best way to describe it.
So it's interesting to me because, I'm on a ton of sites. I mean, Dating Kinky is one of them, but I'm on FetLife and whatever. And people will always be like, so what are you looking for?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not looking. I'm not looking at all. I'm open to possibilities,
right. Mm-hmm.
Which for a lot of people just stops them in their tracks because they have no idea how to process that concept
Yeah.
But I absolutely identify very specifically. I love labels. I love words. I believe that labels are incredibly wonderful and useful as long as you get to apply them to yourself and other people don't apply them to you.
Yeah.
So for me, and this is a mouthful, I identify as a cuckoldress pimptress who is polyamorous and monoromantic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I have a very, teeny tiny little niche in all of this where, I enjoy all of the polyfuckery.
Mm-hmm.
I have amazing people that I love deeply that are, a part of my tribe who sometimes we sexy things together and most often we don't.
Right.
I own, because I'm also kinky.
Mm-hmm.
I own a man, consensually, of course, that I can then pimp out to other people.
Okay.
And I really get a kick out of that. Like something like, he's really good. You need to try it.
Yeah. I'm super into that.
Yeah. It's like, ooh, this is good.
Yeah. I sent my husband to my friend's house recently because she put on Twitter that she was horny. And so I was like,
I have an answer for that.
I was like, I have a great man who could fix this for you. And I got so much excitement out of that, thinking that he was satisfying somebody else.
Yes. Sharing is caring. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's also, for me, it's not just sharing because people will be like, oh my gosh, look at you. You're so generous. And I'm like, no, I'm such a show off.
I hear that.
That's mine.
Yeah.
Honestly, and this is something that I think is important, that in a lot of the normal or common polyamorous communities, me feeling like I'm showing somebody off would be considered very non-polyamorous.
Right.
That's, it's very not right. So that's one of the reasons that I think it's also critical to have voices focused on non-monogamy and not just on polyamory.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, and I think maybe that's one of the reasons that I said I'm fairly resistant to these labels, because I don't think that, because there's so much gatekeeping and how you're supposed to do poly and how you're not supposed to do it. And I don't know. I think that the ways that I like to do things are often criticized. So. Right.
There is no, as I call it, one true way. Right? It's not fair to suggest that two competent consenting adults can't find their own path together.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So somebody just asked, is there a difference between non-monogamy and polyamory? Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're talking about here. Why don't you tell what your differences are?
Well, I think maybe I should say in the way that you did that I'm also fairly monoromantic. And part of that is because I have, I only have so much bandwidth to expend for romantic relationships. And so in my case, the way that I see the difference between those things is that I'm not engaged in romantic relationships with people that I may have, sexual relationships, which isn't to say that those people aren't important in my life. It just means that we have a sexual openness, but a kind of a regular domestic relationship. I don't know. I don't really know how to say that, but yeah, that being said, I should also say that some of the best friends that we have are people that we've been somehow sexually connected to in some capacity. So I wouldn't say that those are just normal, they're not friends with benefits relationships to us. I think they're more intimate connections, but not romantic. They're not romantic in the same way. And I think that polyamorous people want to have romantic relationships with all of the people that they have sexual encounters with.
I think that polyamorous is like a square and non-monogamy is a rectangle. So all polyamorous people are non-monogamous, but not all non-monogamous people are polyamorous.
Right.
So under non-monogamy, you have polyamory, you have polyfuckery, you have swinging, you have cuckolding, you have hotwifing, you have open relationships, you have friends with benefits. In fact, the reason we're calling this ethically and consensually non-monogamous is because you can be non-monogamous and just cheating on somebody.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're non-monogamous.
Yeah.
So that's why I specifically focus in on ethical and consensual. And then there's also even things like I am married, and while we don't have an open relationship, my wife doesn't mind it if I use a sex worker sometimes when I'm on the road. That is, for all intents and purposes, non-monogamous.
Right.
So I think that being able to share the many different ways that non-monogamy can happen is important. Yeah, so that's kind of how I look at it. Is I look at non-monogamy as the umbrella for all of these other things that we're potentially talking about. So we've got people in here talking about like math and so on and so forth. That's not true of any poly people I know. It's true that there are generally multiple loving relationships, but other connections exist as well. And I think that's definitely a point. You know, not all of them are looking specifically for romance from everybody.
Right.
However, what I have found is, and when I talk with polyamorous people, is that their focus is very much on creating those connections. Right. As opposed to, you know, sometimes I just want to fuck. Right. Like, and I don't even need to know them. Now, if I decide I'm going to keep fucking them, then I have to like them. More than 2 or 3 bangs, and I have to actually enjoy their company. But you know, as a cuckoldress, my relationship, and this is another thing, I have a hierarchy. And in polyamory, a lot of the times people are very anti-hierarchy. Right. I have a primary relationship. It is my cuckold. And that's not going to change. So that's also something that's really important, that we understand different people are going to take different things away from what's available in order to make their home.
Right. Yeah. And I think that the way that this gets framed a lot in poly circles is that if you have a hierarchical relationship, then you're somehow like exploiting or using people who aren't in that primary relationship. And that's not what I hear that, and I see that in a lot of like, I was in a poly Facebook group for a long time, for example, and I don't have Facebook at all anymore. But like when I did, I would see what was going on in there. And that was very much what the discourse around hierarchical poly relationships was. But there's people enter into non-monogamous relationships for all sorts of reasons. And not everybody wants to be in, you know, sometimes people have lots of reasons for wanting to be in relationships that, you know, aren't primary and, you know, feel like it's an ethical relationship and they're getting something out of it and they enjoy the sex or they enjoy the companionship, but they don't want to combine resources or households or parenting responsibilities or bank accounts or whatever it is that you do in these like much more like primary relationships. So yeah, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of ways to do things.
I think that, so one of the bonus things that we're going to be adding into the membership for It's Not Cheating is Amarie, who runs our Life in Submission monthly webinar, is a solo poly. Okay. And she is exactly that. She loves dating people in primary relationships, but she has no desire to create, you know, a nesting situation, to combine children, to combine finances, and so on and so forth. She is her own primary, for lack of a better term.
I can see why I could, you know, I'm a married person, so I couldn't do that, but I could see why that would be desirable to people, to be able to maintain your own autonomy, but like drop in with, you know, partners. I've also been a unicorn, like in other people's, you know, relationships. And there's something fun about being, a guest star, about, in being able to tap into like the intimacy of other people, but then go out of it.
The fun without having to wash the skid marks off the underwear.
Yeah. It's just, yeah. You can have these really cool connections and also like feed on the energy of other people and then go back to your life.
Yeah. And Athena asked if I could, for those unaware, explain cucking and the different roles. So cucking is you have a primary relationship, and that can be either, heteronormative or not. So it can be any two people, where one person is sexually constrained and loyal to the relationship, and the other person is sexually free and able to make their own choices. Where the constrained person, the cuck, which could either be a cuckold, which is masculine identifying, or a cuck queen, which is feminine identifying, is a part of the other relationships, in the sense that they love those relationships. They love that they happen. They love have a partner that is, sexually powerful and able to make those choices for themselves. And they love also being loyal to that person. And the roles are, cuck, and then cuckoldress, or gosh, what is I don't even know what the counterpart is for cuckoldress. Ooh, got me on that one. Okay. And then you've got the bull, who is the third party in that relationship, or the cuck cake, which is the feminine identifying version of bull. And there's actually going to be a cucking panel tomorrow night, where we're going to have a bull, a cuckold, a cuckoldress, and a cuck queen in. And then we did a bonus thing with Venus cuckoldress to talk about cuckolding versus various forms of non-monogamy. So that's going to be available for Plus members and the people who get this. So moving on. So you got into, did you discover non-monogamy through your relationship with your partner? I mean, how did that happen with the two of you?
How did it happen? So at the very beginning, you mean?
Yeah. Like what was like
the first,
hey, this is a thing we could do.
So our first experience was so great. So we talked about it for a long time, actually, maybe for more than a year. And because it's hard to wrap your head around when you've been living like in a monogamous mindset for so long, so we talked about like all of the possibilities. And then one day he was like, hey, there's this couple, they want to meet for drinks. Like, do you want to go? And I said, yes, but just drinks. Like, I don't want to go anywhere. And then we meet these people for drinks, and they're performers. Like, he's a piano player and she's an opera singer. She was actually Christine in Phantom of the Opera for years. Like, really, like, they were really beautiful and really like amazing people. And we totally clicked like right away. And I remember going to, and I didn't expect it to be like that. Like, I didn't expect to have like this immediate chemistry with two people, much less like, one. And I went into the bathroom and I texted my husband and I was like, okay, like, I'm totally down for this, which was so surprised. It surprised me. Like, I surprised myself because I went in thinking that I wasn't going to be into it. Then we ended up going home with them and had like a foursome, and we'd never had any experience with any other people besides each other. So we didn't tell them that because we thought they'd think that's weird.
So, I did that. Yeah.
And we didn't want them to feel like it was a high pressure situation or anything, so we just pretended like this was a normal thing that we did, but we had never done anything like that. And it was and then we went home and it was like the sex was amazing. They were amazing. And in the morning we like got up and made pancakes, and we were standing in our kitchen and we were like, what just happened? That was so crazy. And here we are making pancakes. Like, life is still normal. And I think that realization that like life was still normal was so key, because as like a monogamous person, we had like, if your partner sleeps with somebody else, it's like the end of the world. And I was like, I just watched my husband sleep with this other person, and you know what? The world didn't crumble apart. We're making pancakes. Everything is fine.
I've been lied to.
It was fun, and we had a relationship with them for a year. So after that, like, it turned into a really good, they moved, but like turned into a good friendship, and it was great. And like you said, we would sometimes get together and just hang out. We would sometimes get together and have sex. It would sometimes be in different configurations. We would do like threesomes, swapping partners, all kinds of things. Like, we explored a lot of things. And that was my first relationship with a woman too, so it was this very eye-opening experience. The whole thing was like very eye-opening. And then after that, like, a lot of different things happened, but that was our kind of entry into, and the biggest thing, like, if I think back to that, the biggest thing that I think about more than anything else is like that pancake breakfast in the morning where I was like, wait, everything is fine. Like, and then it made me realize that I could be more open to other sorts of experiences. So I think I was lucky. I was lucky that I clicked so much with people that ended up being such good friends that it, made those experiences like really positive, which isn't to say that all my experiences were positive. Like, I've also had, negative experiences in poly and in swinging and in all sorts of things, because it's life. Relationships are messy. But
so for me, I led a really interesting, like, sort of track, because I grew up with non-monogamous.
Yeah.
Didn't even really think a whole lot about it. Like, this is just how people are.
Yeah.
Like, I knew a woman who had a boyfriend and a girlfriend, and that was okay. Yeah. Like, it wasn't ever explicitly explain to me that my parents played with others, but I was always surrounded by people who were very affectionate and loving, like a big family, whatever. So, and then later on in life, I was like, aha. But, for whatever reason, I still very much, like, I felt I had enough love for a bunch of people, but for whatever reason, I thought monogamy had to happen.
Okay.
Right? So,
like, you had to graduate to monogamy, and that would be so
I spent my teenage years sort of exploring and having a good time. And then I settled down. Mm-hmm. Like I should. And my ex-husband was potentially non-monogamous, but jealous eventually, ended up very jealous and trying to be controlling. And then my next boyfriend ended up the same way, despite the fact that, he, when we met, was interested in two people and trying to make that happen, but with me, I think it might have gone very close to a one penis policy, but I never actually took advantage of any of that. So when I got out of those relationships, which took up about 20 years together, and met my pet, and he suggested cuckolding, I was like, it's a trap. Like, this can't be right. But since then, that was about 7 years ago. And since then, my pet was like the 10th man I'd ever slept with. And now I'm a slut. So it's amazing. Like, how, again, I mean, I knew people, like, this was normal to me. It was absolutely okay. I never thought that there was any problem with people, but for whatever reason, for a while, for me, like, I was trapped in okay, if I'm going to be married and do the things, I'm going to have to be monogamous. And I have no idea why. And then I tried to be like super poly, right?
Yeah.
Like, everybody has the exact same chance and, whatever. Yeah. And dialed that all back to realizing, like, like you said, I do not have the brain power for being romantic with multiple people. Like, for, those grand gestures and things like that, I don't have it in me. Yeah. But I love the sex, and I love that deep intimacy with tribe. Yeah. Like, very similar to, your friendship of that first year, just, we can get together and barbecue. Right. Or we can do both. Or something else entirely.
Or we could sit in the park, or it's really funny too, because my, my mom realized that because of the way that we interacted, that there must be something more going on with the woman. And it was so funny because she came to visit, and, you know, they came to my kid's birthday party, and my mom was at the kid's birthday party. And my mom kept saying, like, wait, so who is she? And like, how did you meet? And we had this story that we met on Swing Lifestyle, but we had this story that we met, at the mall because our kids were playing, and that seemed, you know, like a good story. And my mom was like, wait, but what? Like, you were at the mall playground and now you guys hang out? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, what? So then at one point, because she was like badgering me about it, I said, okay, Mom, she's my lover and we swing with them. And she was like, what? And she was totally outraged. And I was like, why were you asking? I thought that's why you were asking. And I come to find out that she thought, I don't know why she would think this, but she's like, I don't know. I thought she was like a pot dealer. I think my mom was trying to like, score pot and didn't want to know anything about my like sexuality. And I was like, why would you think that she sells pot? And she's like, I don't know, because it was weird that she was there. And I was like, okay.
Oh gosh, that's so funny. Your mom's like, you know, it'd be totally cool, like if I could score pot from this girl. Wait, you're having sex with her?
Yeah. And then my mom was like, I know, I'm not into that at all. And I was like, okay, then don't ask.
I didn't invite you. This is my sex life, not yours.
I know. It was comical.
You know, it reminds me now, like I said, I grew up with swingsters. They were kinky. They were non-monogamous. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny because one day my father, and this is before like I was really, you know, out as kinky or whatever. Mm-hmm. I mean, we didn't talk about that, but you know, he says to me, I don't get it. He says, you don't drink, you don't smoke, you don't do drugs. Yeah. He's like, you flunked out of every institute of higher learning you've ever gone to. And I didn't actually flunk out. I did a really good job. He was exaggerating. I just quit. Yeah. Like I got 4.0. I just quit. Yeah. He's like, and he's a professor. So he's like, how exactly did I have anything to do with raising you? He was so disappointed. Like I never like took up pot or whatever it was. Like
I haven't either. I'm not into it, and that's why I was like, why is she think this? I'm way more into sex than I am into drugs.
See, that's the thing. Yeah. I'm like, sex is my drug. You know, Adam Ant. Don't drink, don't smoke. What do you do? Don't you? Right? Like,
yeah. Right.
I know what I do. Yeah. Like,
yeah.
Oh my goodness. It is so funny. Yeah. Yeah. Parents are hilarious. Like the things they like when I finally did try a recreational drug, my dad was like, yay, sweet. Wait, which one was it? And I told him and he was like, I'm so disappointed in you. He's like, I really thought that you'd at least try pot. I'm like,
what did he wanted you to try pot?
Yeah. Well, because that's his thing, right? Yeah. Like, you know, safe and whatever. My mother was always like, if you ever do LSD, honey, do it with me. I'll make sure you have a good trip. Yeah, Mom. Like the first thing I want to do is drugs with my mother.
We have the same parents.
What makes you think I'm going to take you up on that offer? You know, like, come on, this is insane. Yeah, you know? Yeah. Oh my goodness. So when it comes to non-monogamy, mm-hmm. what are some of your favorite things in relation to it, to like talk about, to tell others about, or just to experience?
I love I don't usually talk about this. I love watching my husband have sex with other women, with our friends. I love that. And often like I like to be there, but I don't even necessarily need to participate. Like I like to watch, and this is so specific and weird, but like, not weird, but specific. It was only with him that I like learned how to squirt, and he had with like some of our friends who've come over and been like in threesomes with us, he's like given them the same experience. And that is so exciting to me that like they realize that they could do something with their body that they've never done before, and he can like help them get there. And I have the same sort of like, oh, I feel so proud like that you like did something for our friend that they haven't ever experienced before. And not even, I mean, that's just one example of what I like, but I have to say, I mean, and it's changed at different times, but right now, because I'm very busy with because I have to emit a lot of sexual energy for work, I think that I very much in my personal life like to just be able to experience other people's
I get that. Yeah.
Yeah. Without me being the center of it.
I think, I mean, I love being the center of it as often as possible, but I get plenty of options. But I think that my pet, he is amazing. He does this thing that we call the pedendal massage or pussy massage, where, he has a massage technique that, Yanni massage and whatever that is beyond pleasurable. Women I don't, I'm not so sure about,
I want that. That sounds great.
It's amazing, right? And I totally pimp him out. I'm like, you need to relax, this dude.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to I'll send him off and he'll put his little cage on and he'll go and he'll service somebody.
Yeah.
And then he'll come back and he'll be like,
yeah.
I did it,
Yeah.
And I'm just that's so freaking awesome. And they're like,
right.
Oh God, this is amazing. Can he teach my husband or can he teach my boyfriend or does he do classes or?
I mean, we don't do the sort of cage chastity side of things, but there's something about that I really I enjoy it. And I think I enjoy, and I think this is part of what is exciting to me about it is I enjoy the sensuality and sexuality of women. I like being able to be around that and experience that. But I'm totally in love with my husband. So there's something about those things coming together that's really exciting to me. Yeah.
It's to me, I mean, it's the same thing with cuckolding, I think. I don't think I would be, honestly, I don't think I'd be a very good non-monogamist. I wouldn't be as good a non-monogamist without my partner.
Yeah.
Because my love for him and our bond really adds to everything else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm, me too. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a romantic bond there. And then everything else adds to it and brings to it and creates more with it and for it. And I recently, my friend made fun of me for this too.
6 months ago or something, we went to a club and we're hanging out and this guy became interested in me and we were chatting, we were kind of hitting it off and he's like, do you want to go into one of the rooms? And I talked to my husband. He's like, yeah, that's fine, whatever. And I went back there and then when he was gone, I lost interest. And I was we started kissing and I was like, you know what? It's not going to happen. I got to go. I got to go back out there, and my, our friend made fun of me because she was like, you really went back there and then was like, you're not my husband. I can't do this. I was like, yeah, I just wasn't, I didn't have it for it.
What's great about that? So for me in a situation like that, I'll interact with people individually, but what we do a lot of the time is we take pictures, we take video, or we audio record it. And then I share that with my pet. So he's actually there digitally, even if not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of fills that up for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, even if I love the person, really love them as a friend, we've got one bull that we've been seeing for over 6 years.
Yeah.
Off time. And he's a dear friend of ours and I love him dearly. And yet, that's really,
yeah.
Definitely.
Which I think also all of this points to the fact that there isn't one way to do things.
Oh gosh, no.
Because, yeah. If there's I'm so romantically connected to my partner that's part of a lot of this, you can do that and still consider yourself, non-monogamous.
Absolutely. And consider yourself not just non-monogamous, but ethically.
Yeah.
And
right.
Essentially non-monogamous. Because, again, a lot of people, maybe I shouldn't say a lot, but there are a number of very loud voices out there.
Yeah.
that will say that if you are coupled, like, seriously coupled, primary hierarchy, whatever, that you're not doing it right, and you've not evolved to the correct standard of whatever.
Right.
And I don't think that that's true. I think that you can be very, very much coupled and still know that even giving every other person that comes into your life the exact same chances, the idea that they will take the right steps to get to that same place, so remote, that it's easier to just identify as monoromantic. It's so rare that somebody connects in just that way. Add the years that you have, and so on and so forth. Kist said something in here. Pandolism.
What is it called?
Pandolism refers to joy regarding the sexual activity of one's partner. Now, I had not heard that one.
I hadn't either.
Not to be confused with compersion, right?
Yeah.
I'm familiar with compersion. There's another one. Actually, I'm going to look it up right now because I was just working on the book this morning, and it's going to be out just doing a little bit of editing. Let me see if I can find it. Testillation. The arousal derived from your intimate partner being desired by another. So I included that in the book as well. So that's an interesting one. And yeah, I would definitely say that absolutely applies. So I'm going to have to make a note of that and look it up and get a little deeper into that. Thank you. I'm a word person, Kist, and I love words. Words is good. So what do you think when it comes to non-monogamy and you living it and experience it in your life? What do you think are the greatest misunderstandings or assumptions made?
By monogamous people?
Yeah, or by new to non-monogamy people. Like, just slutting it up, or sometimes.
I don't know. I'd have to think about that. I think there's different ones in different contexts. I think maybe one of them is that a desire to be non-monogamous means that there's something wrong with your relationship, or that there's something missing from it, or I think that's one, probably a big one, that it's some sort of sign that there's something wrong with it. Or that the relationship is like unstable. And also I think, and I say this about I say the same thing about sex work because there's a lot of misconceptions about sex work, but I also think that one of the misconceptions is that things are like primarily about sex and not about like other sorts of connections. Because I do think that, people like sex and sex is enjoyable and pleasurable, but I also think that sex brings about like different ways of relating to people that you don't have otherwise. And so if you can move into some sort of like ethically non-monogamous space, you're also opening up yourself to different types of relationships that are about more than just sex.
I think that there's a saying out there that when everything is going well, sex is like 20% of the relationship. But when sex is not going well, it's 80% of the relationship. And I think that that's true when people think about non-monogamy. They're thinking about their relationships well, and, they put this huge importance on the sex aspect. Well, if I was, not, happy with my partner, then, I'd want to go deal this. And it does make sense. I mean, there's a lot of like, but when's the orgy happening?
Right.
Well, Saturday, but there's 6 other days.
Right. Where other sorts of things happen. Yeah. I mean, I actually think that there's I think that there's an obsession with sex in conservatism. Like that there's a way in which like
when things are going badly in your life, sex is 80% of it.
Yeah, but I think that there's a way in which people who have really like closed off ideas about sexuality, or who are more like, where they place like a much higher importance on sex than people who, like repression is obsession in, a lot of ways. And so I think that, that there's this overemphasis on sex. And that's what, I see that really clearly in sex work, where people think that we're just like having sex or doing sexual acts all the time, when actually so much of our interactions with our clients are emotional or social or other things. And I think the same thing is true for non-monogamy, is that people who are outside of it can't see that there's things going on other than just like fucking all of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think a part of it is, just I'm not going to use the word conservative. I'm going to use prude.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's ways to be conservative. I'm conservative in a lot of ways, financially, for example.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But my prudishness is relatively low. And so I don't feel like that I need to try to legislate what other people do with their bodies.
Sure. Right. Yeah.
And I do feel that anybody who is trying to repress who they are, especially when it comes to sexuality, is going to find themselves. It's kind of like when you're on a diet, right? And
yeah. Right.
You're like, oh, I can't eat that ice cream. And then what happens? You obsess about the salted caramel gelato ice cream that's in your refrigerator, your freezer for the next 48 hours. You just you've never cared that much before, but as soon as you say no, I can't have that because reasons.
Yeah.
So
on it. Yeah.
Athena says, Jessie, do you personally find it more difficult to have relationships, poly or not, because of being in the sex industry? I've heard from others that it's difficult to maintain relationships or dynamics if you're doing kink because of jealousy, expectations.
Yes, I do find it more difficult. And the reason I find it more difficult is because not just the sex work, but the fact that I'm a sex writer and I host a podcast on sex, and my entire professional career is related to sex, that it's difficult for me to engage in sex in a recreational way, in the way that I used to. And I think part of that is that I do so much online work that I can't use dating apps anymore because it feels exactly like work to me, except there's no money, so.
Wait, that's like a startup.
Yeah. I mean, and that sounds like a weird thing to say, except that doing sex work is just like dating. And so the sexting, the talking, the back and forth, the phone sex, all of that is the opening stages to, getting to know somebody on dating apps too, or trying to set up relationships. And there's nothing different about those structures. And so it kind of sucks the fun out of it. And that's kind of a shame. But then on the other hand, it's not really a shame because it also means that I get to do what I think is fun anyways. It's a kind of complicated, I think.
I think that absolutely makes sense. I think there's a lot of people if you even take sex out of it, there's a lot of people who've made the mistake of taking something that they love and making a business out of it, and then realizing that business changes how you interact with that thing.
It does, actually. Yeah. And, my partner works with me, we make content together, and we run a business together. And so he doesn't experience jealousy, it's not that. And, I know that there are sex workers who have issues with relationships because of that. We don't have that problem. But it is very much this is what I do in my work. So how do you create space to want to do the exact same thing in work in your personal life? That's a bigger issue.
Yeah. So Athena then responded with, so do partners need to say this sex is off the record? Which, No, I can totally get, like, there are times when, even just from a dynamic standpoint, where you're like, okay, you know, I'm in charge, blah, 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 blah. Every once in a while, it's like, okay, you know, I'm in charge, but I'm telling you, I'm not thinking tonight. So it is up to you to do what you know will be good for me, right? You take over, you do the things and make the things happen and whatever it is. So
yeah, and it's complicated too, like off the record, because we, you know, I run an OnlyFans and we make videos together, and so some of our sex is documented, you know, and we do have cameras on, and that's very different than the sex that we have. It's not very different. Like, one of the things that we do is like try to create like very authentic things, but you do switch camera angles and try to get a good shot and deal with lighting, and it's much more technical. And so I think that you do have to kind of negotiate, like, is this going to be something that, and we relate to it in very different ways too. So we have to also negotiate, like, the fact that he gets excited by creating art. You know, he's like an artist who gets excited by creating art. And to me, I'm like, I can't sit in this position for this long while you're like doing this. So there's like a little bit of like conflict there. Not conflict, but like, we have different ways of relating to the sexuality of like creating something, or the eroticism of creating something, where I much more enjoy the sex that's off camera and he like enjoys the sex that's on, but we manage to both enjoy sex, if that makes
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I get that. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, if you think about, you know, if you take the sex work out of it and you think about the difference in kink, like, for example, between scenes or performative actions, the things that you just do when, you know, you come together. And for those people who don't know about kink, not everything is a scene. Like, I wake up on Saturday morning and like get in my leather corset and latex and like my 6-inch heels, and, you know, then sit down with a newspaper and put my, you know, feet on his back. So, you know, while he's naked and waiting to perform for me. Just in case anybody here thought that. So this is funny. I run a Women in Charge group on Facebook. And so there was a photo of exactly that. A woman sitting with her newspaper, like completely head to toe, like dominant, you know, wank fantasy all the way, and her feet up on a naked man's back. And a woman posted this and said, just another Saturday morning. I'm like, if that's your Saturday morning, you are way more dedicated to this shit than I am. Let me show you my Saturday morning. Hi.
Right.
I've actually gotten dressed today because I'm on camera, right?
I totally relate to that, because I do phone sex and sometimes I do one-on-one cam sessions, but then but if I'm not planning to get on camera, like my hair's in a messy bun and I have no makeup on and my room is a mess, and people will be like, can you get on cam now? And I'm like, do you think I just sit around like in lingerie, like sexy all day? No. You gotta schedule that shit. Like, I need an hour's notice.
That's like the guys who are like, they're trying to like, you know, get all like sexy with me via text, right? And it's 2 p.m. on a work day. And they're like, what you wearing? Jeans and a fucking tank top, dude. Like, what the hell do you think I'm wearing? Like, oh, no, wait a minute. Let me go change.
And I wonder if they want a real story, or like the real answer, if they want you to just make something up.
I don't even care. I'm not going to lie for shit like that. Like, that's, you know, like, I don't have the energy for that. Like, I'm not going to sit there and try to like, lace. I'm wearing lace. Like,
and then they'll be like, show me. And you're like, oh, no.
No, sorry, can't. No, I'm
in the middle of what's going on right now.
I'm wearing lace. No, I'm in the middle of a phone meeting. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, it is 9:00. Let me real quick go through and do our spiel.
Okay.
So for those of you, well, anyway, some of you have heard this before. Lucky you. I'm Nookie. I'm the owner of Dating Kinky. I'm the founder. We are a startup dedicated to bringing people together in kink and alternative lifestyles. And we're producing this Not Cheating event, which I'm super excited about, the amazing response that we've gotten. And we have started off with an amazing hour of discussion and content, and that thrills me. So thank you all so far for spending an hour of your time with us. And thanks to Jessie, of course, for spending an hour of her time with us. That's pretty fucking amazing. I'd like to tell you a little bit about what we do here. So we do events like this, single events, not 2-day events all that often, thank fucking God. But single events, we do about 10 of them a month, and we're working towards more. And those are all free to attend live. We also record them just like we're doing this one. And we put them into our archives so that our Plus members can access them on demand via video, via MP3. And we also include the chat transcripts so you can catch up with the people that, put their links in there and say, hey, friend me or follow me on Twitter, or there's a book that you wanted to check out or whatever it is. So you have access to all of that. In addition, our Plus membership is also a library. I write and publish a new book every month. So right now, there are 8 books in that library, and as of tomorrow, there will be 9 books in that library because it's not cheating. It's ethical and consensual non-monogamy. The book will be in the library as of tomorrow morning. And we also have a dating site where Plus membership gets you awesome features. And that's actually in beta right now. If you go to beta.datingkinky.com, you can register. And then as soon as we open that up, which will be in the next week or so, you will get access and benefits there. So there's that. Plus, we're an amazing, I like to think anyway, kinky small business. And your $5 a month, yes, Plus membership is $5 a month, will help us continue producing content like this, creating books, updating our code. We're about to start next week development on our mobile apps. So we've got a lot going on, and $5 a month can actually go a really long way, even though it might not seem like it. If you feel generous, please do follow it. If you do not feel generous for any reason, you are still welcome here. We do these events because education is critically important, and bringing community together is also important. Our dating site is actually free. The Plus benefits just get you additional features. So, feel free to come and join us, even if you don't have the money or you don't want to spend the money. Also, feel free to tell your friends and invite them and say how awesome this site is and I am and all of the things. Because remember that, the person that somebody else tells that might join us one night might be the person that you're looking to connect with. Now, back to Q&A and discussion. Woohoo! Back to sexy, fun, non-monogamy time. Trying to sell shit.
For a Saturday morning. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I think it's interesting to me that there are so many different views on non-monogamy and what it's about. And I also feel that the gatekeepers that, we discussed earlier, I feel that they mean well. Mm-hmm. In the sense that they are trying very hard to create something that is ethical or that feels good to a number of people, because, and I wrote about this in the It's Not Cheating book, and like there's 2 camps in this. There's the Ermagerd, there's incredibly vulnerable people out there who are going to get taken advantage of if we don't put rules on these things. Mm-hmm. And then there's the more RA crowd, or like the live and let live crowd, that are like, well, we're all adults,
right?
And if we decide to accept something that is not good for us, that's on us. That's not on the people who are not good for us, right? And I see both sides of that, right? Mm-hmm. I believe as an adult that I am responsible for every single relationship I get into, including accepting shitty behavior from people. I'm not responsible for their shitty behavior, but I'm responsible for sticking around if
Right. Yeah. I was thinking about this as you were talking. One of the things that I think is that when because non-monogamy isn't the norm, I think that people want to place like negative, like blame it for negative things that happen when, and say like, well, I was hurt in these relationships because they were non-monogamous, or because people didn't engage in the way that they were supposed to in non-monogamy, or in ethical non-monogamy. But honestly, like, people are people and they behave badly in monogamous relationships too. And I think that I think maybe part of the like gatekeeping and part of the trying to set up like, what are the rules that make it so that people aren't like exploited, or that, people have positive experiences in this, is like a defensive posture too, to being like, look, there's nothing wrong with what we're doing. And there can be things that are wrong with what you're doing, but that's true in monogamous relationships as well. So
it actually reminds me, there's a man here locally. He teaches in Durham. He's a professor, and he did a discussion about whether or not, this was, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. He did a talk about whether or not kink should be included under the LGBT umbrella, because this was a thing, every LGBT Pride Month, this thing comes around with kink pride. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right? And so I guess it was exactly a year ago. Yeah. And in that discussion, one of the things he talked about was that queer pride was originally a bunch of trans women of color rioting. Yeah. And then in order to gain respectability, it became very, homonormative. Right. Mm-hmm. The 3 M's: marriage, military, and monogamy. Right. Mm-hmm. And it feels like, they got there. And so now there's a bunch of like straight queers who are like, oh, those people out at the festivals wearing their puppy masks, those are not like us queers, right? Like, they're not the queers like us. And I feel like, now that non-monogamy is getting more mainstream, there's those two camps. No, look at us. We're the nice, throuple. Yeah. Who live in a nice home and drive a nice car. We're not like those sex crazed addicts over there.
Yeah, it's like the difference between like assimilationist models and like, it's like the whole like, we're not gay as in happy, but queer as in fuck you. Like, what is the orientation? Is it like trying to take like the way that we do things and assimilate them into the normative culture, or is it actually like fighting against those and trying to create something different? And the whole idea of like, should there be sex at Pride comes up every single year too.
I think it's fascinating to me though, and then looking at the other side of it though, I do feel that aside from the responsibility I feel personally, I do feel that there are people out there who are maybe less strong or less experienced. Yeah. Who deserve some sort of protections, but the only protections we can really offer is education like this. Right. Like, the only thing we can do is say, here are so many different ways to look at things. Here are things to watch out for. Here are things to understand about yourself. There is no one true way. Like, if somebody tells you you're not poly if you don't do this, that's bad, right? Like so I see both sides, and I try to, kind of address both sides. Is that yes, you're responsible for your experiences ultimately, and yet, if you don't know shit, you don't know how to judge your experiences.
Yeah, I also think that's why community building is so important. Why, like, it becomes the job of the community to be able to coach or to help, or even just to be there for people who don't know how to make sense of their experiences, or who are having negative experiences. And I think that that's where stigma is really like a problem too, because I know a lot of non-monogamous people who've gone to their therapist, for example, when they're having issues with their relationships, and therapists have said things like, well, the problem is that, you're non-monogamous and you need to like knock all that out and then your relationship will be better. And that's not true for a lot of people. For some people, maybe it is, but for a lot of people, that's not the root problem. And so I think that, community building in this sense, destigmatizing non-monogamous relationships all work to like those things I think work better to protect people who need to protect people. I don't think, not in the patriarchal sort of way, but to hold people is maybe a better way to say it, to
give people the resources that they need to know that protection is available.
Yeah. Right.
I completely agree. I think that a lot of people come into this and there's a theory out there called Savior Whorf that's about the language that you use molds your brain. Yeah. So, for example, there are African languages that don't have right or left. They have to constantly be oriented north, south, east, and west. Yeah. And so their brain has learned over the course of their lives to always know direction, right? Yeah. And I think it's the same thing with this. The more you learn, the more you interact with people, the more you make friends, not just bumping uglies in the lifestyle, right? The more vocabulary and conceptual understanding you get. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, I think that's really important. And you're able to make sense of your experience. I think that you need like a baseline vocabulary to be able to make sense of your experience.
Yeah, very, very much so. I definitely agree with that. So in the chat, there's something that I do want to address in the chat. And that is they're talking a little bit about gender roles. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that, somebody mentioned is, men crave sex, women crave intimacy. And I think that the challenge with that is that simply by saying it, even if it is more generally true than not, let's even give it that. Simply by saying it, though, we're boxing people in instead of allowing them to label themselves. And I think that this is a critical thing that hurts us all. Like we can say, 68% of men prefer sex over intimacy and 72% of women prefer intimacy over sex. That's a fact. I made those numbers up. It's not actually a fact, but that if that were true, if studies had been done, that would be a fact that we could then say, but 72% of women, that means that 28% of women crave sex over intimacy. And 28%, that's like 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4, somewhere between. That's a lot of freaking people. If you think that women with people with green eyes is like only 2% of the population. So these numbers, these ideas that we have in our head, as long as we assign them gender, I think that we're driving wedges in between people rather than saying, I have found personally, for example, that I am way more sexual when I am also very happily intimate.
Yeah. I also think that we should look at the way in which people are socialized to ask for the things that they want. So I believe because I talk to a lot of men in my work about what it is that they want, that there's ways in which men have been socialized to feel comfortable asking for sex and not asking for intimacy. And where often with, I did a series of interviews with men about why they seek sex workers, for example. And one of the men that I interviewed, and I thought this has always stuck out in my head, he said, oh, well, sex gets put on the table and everything else is a hidden agenda item. And I thought that was really insightful and interesting because, we have stereotypes about men just want sex or women just want intimacy, but actually there's ways in which women are socialized to not express desire for sex and men are socialized to not express desire for anything except sex. And so you kind of have this bias built into how you're also reading what it is that people want.
Yeah. And Lysol Gibran, I'm emotionally monogamous, but sexually non-monogamous. Does that make any sense? Absolutely. Yeah. Monogamish or open relationship or swinging. All of those sort of focus in on that type of thought pattern and physical behavior. Absolutely. So this has been a great discussion. Thank you so much for joining me at Dark 30 on Saturday morning.
My grandfather used to always say that, Dark 30.
It's
all right. I just put up Jessie's links in chat, and somebody named Meebies Love Men asks, "Can they see Ryan?" And you could see me during the pre-shows. I have not left Vanilla work life yet. Nookie has not hired me away yet. So
yes, so, not get him on during recording time. So
yes, you'll so stay online during the pre-shows. You can. I'm not camera shy.
Go follow me on Twitter.
All of Jessie's links are there. Her Twitter and her all links, and the Peep Show podcast, which. And stay tuned. Maybe check it out in the meantime. But we're going to try to get Nookie on there in the next few months or so.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.